Good evening. Welcome back, and we'll continue with the meeting. So we're going to stay in order of the approved agenda. So written communications regarding AB 2502. Clay just did a little quick search from the League of California Cities, and it is a watch designation. So apparently they have some concerns with it. So perhaps we should not make a recommendation just yet. Hold off. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Since I think that Clay mentioned that he thought that Assemblymember Mullen was looking for support sooner than our next regular scheduled meeting, perhaps if, as individual members of the council, we look into this and get more information and can give our recommendations if we want to support or not.
Individually.
Rather through staff than through council, through a regular meeting. Would that make sense?
Yeah, well, I'll do some phone calls tomorrow too, and then I'll try to get some information out to the council, and then people can give me feedback.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, good. All right. Item C, review proposed city council meeting schedule for budget dates, summer schedule, and evaluations. So it's right here. Yeah, and then
Just to walk you through the calendar a little bit, just a reminder that what would be the next regular council meeting on May 5th will not take place that night. So the next meeting will be basically a month from now, and what we're planning on doing is having a closed session at 7 o'clock, labor negotiations, and then we would do our budget overview. And the budget will be a little bit different this year because that's a little bit early for the budget. But the reason that I've got it on the 19th is because we've got the Parkside workshop on June 2nd. I was kind of thinking of maybe trying to do both of them together, but I think that might be kind of problematic. Yeah. So we will, as you recall, when we met a couple months ago, we introduced you to that new fiscal health model. So we'll be going through that with actually the council subcommittee in a couple weeks, and then we'll bring that forward on the 19th and do the 5-year projections in the fiscal health model. There'll be some policy issues there that will seek some council input on, having to do with funding of some of the long-term liabilities and stuff. So that's the plan for May 19th. June 2nd, again, would be the Parkside study session. Both of these items, I mean, these are regular council meetings, so there will be other council business that night. With regards to the Parkside study session night, we'll try to keep it somewhat limited, only because, it's kind of hard to know how long that we're going to need for that. And then we need to set dates for city manager evaluation, city attorney evaluation. So I was volunteering myself for June 2nd, and that would be presumably at I don't know, Lori. I don't know. Is there any way we could do 6:30 that night?
On what day? June 2nd?
June 2nd. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be okay that night because my parents will be visiting.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's do that at 6:30, and the regular meeting will start at 7:30.
okay, so 6:30 for the second. Okay.
And then the budget presentations on June 14th and June 16th. June 16th would be a regular council meeting, but we would just use it for a budget evening. And then Tuesday, the 14th, would be a budget meeting, subject to council's decision. And city attorney's evaluation. Pardon me?
Tuesday, June 14th, I'm not available. I'm out of town.
You're out of town. Okay. Are you out of town all that week, or?
No, just Monday and Tuesday.
Is it possible, can we do Wednesday? I think we were just, the reason we were thinking about Wednesday was it's back-to-back nights, but if the council's.
I'm fine with that.
We get out by 9:30.
That's your call.
Okay. All right.
You guys run the
do
meeting.
that then.
Okay.
June 15th and 16th then.
Yes, so we'll tentatively June 16th, and just to make sure, I'll send something out to you tomorrow to confirm that. And then the city attorney evaluation would be, Ken, if we could do it at 6:30? You don't, he says he doesn't need an hour, so you could probably do 7? Yeah, okay. That's
So,
usually
that's
the
the
case.
15th or the 16th?
The 16th,
What time?
7?
Okay.
And then we were thinking that we would have kind of a council meeting on the 5th Thursday of the month, which would be June 30th, and that would be the final budget adoption. It's not mandatory that we do it before July 1, but it's always kind of nice to meet that deadline. And then the summer schedule's kind of been problematic. I appreciate Lori got me some dates that she's not available, so this is obviously subject to work, the council. I was thinking of having one meeting in July. There's one kind of core issue that we need to bring forward in the summertime, and be working with the council Baylands subcommittee with regards to the Baylands hearing process before the council. As you know, the Planning Commission is getting close to wrapping up their deliberations, and we anticipate the council's deliberations to start this fall, but we want to have a staff report and a discussion with the council about the hearing process, and that the hearings are going to be coming forward, and kind of the timing and stuff like that. So it won't be about any of the substance of the Baylands, but it'll just be about the process. So I was thinking of doing that on July 14th. I've been trying to get dates where people are in town. July 21st, I'm going to be gone, and then the first 2 Thursdays of August, Michael's not available, and I think John, Zwicky, Michael, and myself all need to be, here for that particular subject matter.
So did you say July 14th? That's not on the calendar. Is that an addition?
It's on the other calendar that was given to us.
Oh, there was another revised, sorry, I was looking
Another
at the one from the
revised.
packet.
Yeah, this has been changing. It's been fluid. Let's put it that way.
Moving target here.
So
Okay.
July 14th would be, and then you would have a summer break from July 14th to September 1st. So you'd have 6 weeks off there.
Whoa, that's fine.
And then the only other date of note is that October 6th is the League of California Cities Conference.
Gotcha.
So I think we canceled last year, our council meeting that conflicted. So that would be canceled.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, works with me.
Does that work?
Bless you.
Bless you again. Okay, so everyone good with the agenda as
Yeah, okay.
stated here? Okay. All right. Since we do have some folks in the audience that are waiting for item number E, is council okay with having E come before D?
Sure.
All right.
Do we need to, can't D just be acknowledgement of the issue?
I don't know. I mean, it's fine with me. I have no issues with it. But
I'm good with it.
October
everyone
1st.
good with October 1st?
Yeah, it's fine.
Good.
Yes.
What time
Okay.
is that, in the evening normally?
Usually, yeah.
Okay. All right, so item E. All right, so like I had said before, so we have this letter that was drafted, I'm assuming by Peter, probably help with other members of, other members of the community in regards to having the council, the city of Brisbane, take a position with the FAA regarding the initiative. So just kind of going back a little bit, so going back a few years ago, the city had been experiencing a lot of vectored flights over Brisbane, and that caused tremendous quality of life issues for our community. The flights, though, were being vectored over central Brisbane. Areas like the Ridge really were not affected that much, but mostly the flights were concentrated over central Brisbane. You go back even farther when planes would fly the SEPTI and then would make the turn, they would fly over Brisbane a little bit, and I'm kind of going off of memory when I first moved to Brisbane, but a lot of the planes would fly over Daly City or parts of San Francisco. But over the last 7 to 8 years, really concentrating the vectoring over central Brisbane. So recently, about a year and a half ago, the next-gen system came on board. That system is supposed to make the flight procedures more efficient. Unfortunately, they moved the waypoint closer to Brisbane, and that has caused some issues with other parts of Brisbane. So one of the things that has occurred is that there's been a greater diversion of where the flights go. So whereas before NextGen, the concentration was in central Brisbane still gets a lot of vectored flights over this part of town, but now a lot of noisy flights are flying over the Ridge, and a lot of noisy flights are flying over San Francisco, which has come through in the complaints that have been reported to the SFO Noise Abatement Office. But the whole NextGen system has caused a lot of grief for a lot of communities. And so through the effort of Congressman Speer, SU, and FAR, the FAA has come to the table with this initiative. Now, the years that I've been on the roundtable, the FAA has never really engaged communities until now. However, this is what they've said they're going to do, but we still do not know what they are going to do. We're still in the dark. I had a conversation with Kathleen Wentworth of Jackie Spear's office. Still no real guidance of what the FAA is going to do. The roundtable has put together these technical working group meetings prior to the initiative to be more proactive and to try and engage local FAA officials up in the TRACON facility near Sacramento. So the roundtable was already in position to actually, to play a major role in dealing with the FAA, and that's why Congresswoman Speer appointed, so to speak, the roundtable to represent the area around the airport in dealing with the FAA for the initiative. So in the letter that was drafted, I thought it's excellent. It was an excellent letter and provides a very good foundation for us as a city to state to the FAA, these are things that we want you to consider. These are the things that we want you to evaluate in your study. The FAA will take that feedback and they'll do their analysis, and whether it's to ensure that it's safe and efficient. Those are the two requirements that they have. So if you look at page 2, there's a list of 10 things that that I have modified from the letter, and some things I've kept in place. But these are things that we'd like the FAA, or that potentially, as a council, as a city, would like the FAA to consider in evaluating the next-gen procedures that have been implemented. So the first one is the stick waypoint, and that is the particular procedure that causes the most noise issues for our city. Planes fly to the waypoint. If they fly before the waypoint and they're vectored, central Brisbane gets hit. If they go through the waypoint and they make their turn right after the waypoint, for the most part, the Ridge gets affected. If they keep going north up to San Francisco gets affected. And so one of the things that we've been kind of discussing, and I've talked with Peter as well as the SFO abatement officer, Bert Ganong, as well as Kathleen Wentworth from Jackie Spear's office, is that moving the waypoint, having the stick waypoint be moved as far east and north as possible. That's the first waypoint. Get the planes over the water for as long as possible. In my conversations with Bert and Kathleen, there's also a need to establish a second waypoint when the planes make their turn over the water and when they get onto the land. If there is not a second waypoint, then once the plane goes through the first waypoint, where that plane goes, that's up to, I guess, the air traffic controller. If we can get the planes as far north and as far east as possible, I think we all stand a better chance of having the planes be at a higher altitude by the time they go over our residential communities. And so if they're at a higher altitude, when the planes go over our residential communities, we stand a better chance of not being negatively impacted. Item number 2, talks about just not having the planes being vectored, that if these waypoints are established, that the air traffic controller should let the planes fly through those waypoints. There's a procedure that comes out of Oakland called the candle, and there are 2 waypoints. There's forgot the first one, but there's a second waypoint called a candle, and those planes are being vectored before the planes reach candle, and they come in direct head-to-head conflict with the stick procedures. We want those planes to also fly through the candle waypoint.
So one affects the other.
Exactly. There's also these PCAs, and that's the area around a waypoint. Currently, the FAA has a 1-mile radius around a waypoint. That is way too big. That's using old technology, with an old system. Now we have this more precise GPS, and we really should be using a PCA that's a 1/4-mile radius. So if planes are flying a candle through the candle waypoint at a 1/4 mile, and they're flying the stick, there should be enough separation, which is 6 miles. If it's head-to-head, 3 miles side to side. Of course, it's going to be the FAA that's going to decide that, not us. We can make suggestions, but really it's the FAA that's going to decide.
It'd be interesting to know what it is at other airports and around the United States, because I don't think that's consistent.
So, what the FAA is doing with the NorCal Metroplex is unique. No other area in the country has this type of engagement with the FAA. So this is kind of it's an experimental thing. And so we should put our best effort forward. At night, during our last meeting, I made the comment that, trying to have no flights come over Brisbane during the hours of midnight and 6. Now that was what was discussed at the last roundtable meeting. I think it should be 10 to 6. And that's what, I think we should try and shoot for. Between 10 and 6, there's less traffic in the sky. And so you can do different procedures. There's this one called the 050. It's used on a voluntary basis. We'd like to make it an RNAV procedure so that is the one that's used. And so when the planes take off from SFO, they make a U-turn and head south down the bay instead of going north and then making a turn over Brisbane. If the plane cannot do that, we're recommending that it continue north through the Golden Gate, then out towards the ocean and head south, completely bypassing Brisbane altogether.
In every other city.
Absolutely. And then, let's see, there's a night procedure that sometimes causes problems for us when the planes fly off the 28 runway. When they fly off the 1 and they head right onto the bay, no problem. When they go to 28 and they make a very wide turn, that affects us on the backside. And so there are waypoints that they should be able to hit. There will be some times when there's weather affecting those procedures, but for the most part, they should be able to do that. And so, let's see. I'm not going to talk about the next one. The other thing is that, when you're at a roundtable meeting, Bert Ganong provides a report. And he usually has this fly quiet report. But those reports are not, I don't think they're very productive. I'd rather see reports that say, okay, this is how many times, this is the percentage of the planes that fly through these waypoints. And, building a track record of, are you doing it properly, or are you missing the mark? And not having the SFO abatement officer doing it, but having an FAA official providing the report. So if these suggestions are implemented, you're going to want the FAA to do the report and have accountability for making sure that they are doing what they said they would do, and provide an explanation why they are not doing it. And that currently does not exist, but that is something, as the chair, that I hope I can get our roundtable members to agree to. So with that, we have some members of the audience, and I'd like for them to come to the podium and add to what I said or contradict what I had said, whatever. But ultimately, in the end, we as a community need to speak with one voice. Mm-hmm. And, we don't want to shift noise to anybody. What we want to do is we want to make a better situation for all concerned. So first up is Patrick Tainter.
Hello again. Thank you. The first thing I would like to say is that regardless whether the noise is over the ridge or over central Brisbane, the noise is over Brisbane. We are one city. Whether flights are vectored, it doesn't matter. The noise ends up over Brisbane. The next-gen system that was introduced a little over a year ago has had the effect of taking what were broadly distributed flights, because it was a manually managed system, human-controlled, and has had the ability to take those and squeeze them down into a one-lane highway, where plane after plane is coming after the plane in front of it at a frequency of every 2 to 3 minutes. This creates a very disturbing, unpleasant noise situation for our city, and those items are very well written on the first page. Children in school, professionals trying to work at home, people trying to sleep. At a frequency of every 2 to 3 minutes, you cannot concentrate. You look down, you start to work on something, here comes something else to disturb your noise. What we are requesting the City Council to do, and the Council has done a great job in amending the letter and made it stronger and better, is that the noise be geographically distributed again. We realize we live next to an airport. We're going to have some noise. We just don't think we should have all of it. Now, the letter, we support it. I support it in all areas except one. And that is point number 1 on page 2, where it says, move the stick waypoint further east. Create a second waypoint. When you look at a map and you look at how the flights and compare where those waypoints would be located, and you look at how the flight patterns are currently being done, it looks like those waypoints will have the impact of putting all the noise over the ridge. That's not what we want. And furthermore, we are not aviation experts that have been formally trained or certified to tell where an airplane should fly. What I believe number 1 should say is that to reduce the noise on Brisbane. Now, other aspects come down, we state lower down. We don't want to simply dump it on someone else. We realize that we will accept some, we have to have some noise. Just it cannot be the constant drone of living next to a highway where we have plane after plane after plane. That's my only concern. We should not be specifying to the FAA where to put the waypoints. We should give them the objective, the goal of reducing the noise in Brisbane. They are the experts. let them figure out where to best put the waypoints, and then hold them accountable to that. Thank you.
Next up, Jay Patel.
I think Patrick did a great job explaining the concerns at the Ridge. A little bit about my background. I've worked in Brisbane since 1995. Moved up to the Ridge in 2002. Still work in Brisbane. The company I work for generates a lot of sales tax revenue for the city of Brisbane as well. But that's just a side note since you guys were talking about taxes earlier and sales taxes. My concern is with paragraph, or I guess note number 2, page 2. Again, I can't emphasize having a workshop to allow more time to kind of go through different issues, topics, having proper dialogue to discuss this. But something Bert said recently at a roundtable meeting that I attended, and he said, "Be careful what you wish for." And because the subject matter I was talking about was vectoring and flights going over the ridge, and at that time there was a map on the city, it still is there, with a 1 mile radius from downtown. I go, well, that doesn't include my house. I live in Brisbane, but I'm not in the 1 mile radius. I'm 1.5 miles out. He goes, well, that's when he said, be careful what you guys wish for. You shifted the noise up. He goes, yeah. So having a second waypoint needs to be well thought out before floating it out. And I really think this is not, more dialogue needs to take place, more data needs to be acquired, and certainly having more input from the community. Essentially, from my perspective, you'll be funneling more flights over. Right now, not all flights hit Brisbane. Every day, Monday through Friday, these airlines will have flights. Every airline has a 6 o'clock flight, 6:15, 6:20. It's pretty regular. Their flights are flight patterns. But yet, Brisbane does not get nailed every day. The Ridge does not get nailed every day. That means some of those flights are going north of us like they used to. So by putting the second waypoint, you'll be actually funneling flights, and you could actually backfire. I mean, have more flights over the Ridge. So therefore, we really just need to have more dialogue to talk about it. And it should be taken out of this letter. Thanks.
Peter?
Thank you very much indeed for letting me speak yet again about this topic that I feel absolutely passionate about. I feel it's a real major quality of life issue for Brisbane, and you've heard me speak to each of you before. And I hope I'm not sort of a long-playing record that's got stuck in the bad groove. I think it's a major issue for Brisbane in the same sort of way for quality of life. The quarry, the Baylands, the Parkside development are all quality of life issues, and so is noise. And so I really support Patrick and Jay's suggestion of having a workshop on the noise so the citywide can really understand what indeed we're really buying into. What are we really asked to do? I would like to say, commenting on what Cliff has said earlier, I would like to say that vectoring has always been a problem over Brisbane. Ever since I've lived here, and I've been here since since 1998. And I've worked with people who've now left because the noise was too bad. Peggy and Barry Corlett, Jeff Zayas have all left because of the noise, and other people are leaving. What I'm now going to say is I've discussed with Kathleen Wentworth of Spears' office what I'm going to discuss now. Let me say up front, I lack the technical expertise and data to evaluate where waypoints can be. I don't have it. I can make suggestions, but I don't have the data or the technical expertise or the access to the tools to be able to do it. So I'm also concerned about item number 1, about pointing out where we're planning things to go. And I feel that we've either got to take it out and fly further over water to the waypoint, or the alternative, as Cliff is doing, is to be more specific. But Cliff, if you're going to be more specific, the letter needs to say, in item number 1, move the Styx waypoint further east. In your verbal one, you said north and east. If you're going to go and I believe it should be further north and east, so that needs to be added to the letter and not just missed out here. So I'd like to go, if you're going to go for more specific, it says further north and east. And I've run through with you about, indeed, where the point may well be and how it would run. I could show you diagrams on a board and have it. It's going to confuse everybody, including me. And item number 7, it says develop a metric to measure compliance with fly-through waypoints. I believe that we need to be more specific. There are 2 types of waypoints. There's a thing called a fly-over waypoint, where the plane is meant to fly over it, and there's a thing called fly past. They're very different. You can't have the same metric for both. One is a case of flying over the point, and the other one is waving to it out the side window.
These are all fly-through waypoints that are in this area.
There's no such thing as a fly-through. It needs to be said fly over.
That's what the Tracon person told me.
Well,
last
let
week.
me say, Cliff, I went and looked on Google, and I looked for the words
All right.
fly-through waypoint. It doesn't exist. It's not I put fly-through waypoint
Okay.
and FAA.
And that's
There is no,
fly- that's
and whether the
fly over
person
then.
that, please let me finish, so that I suggest that you change it back to the technical term which is used called a flyover waypoint.
Okay.
While I completely applaud you, Cliff, about asking for the FAA to report back on how the flights are performing with respect to the waypoints, I'm not sure that that is really something appropriate in this letter here. And if you are going to put it in, there needs to be a greater understanding of what indeed we're actually signing up for. At the moment, the FAA is saying that for a 15-day period, they had 13 flights that did not comply because they went outside the 1 mile radius. We know that 1 mile radius is no good. It's not going to be helpful for us to come back and listen to the round table where the FAA says we had 0.0001% failing to fly. And the reason is because the metric circle around the waypoint is so big that it encompasses everything. We need to stand here and say what is appropriate. So if you're going to verbally say a quarter of a mile, it needs to be written in here or taken out altogether. But you need to get agreement from the FAA as to what's appropriate, and I imagine that's been really that would be difficult to do.
No, you're right. A quarter mile should be in here.
And to be honest, the elephant in the room here is that 50% of the flights through Styx fail to fly the appropriate procedure. And that needs to be addressed a lot more strongly than in this letter here. There's a 50% failure rate. So the FAA have designed a system that's 50% failure. I think the council needs to be bold and say this is totally unacceptable. Would you, in manufacturing, in any of your businesses, you're in the restaurant business, aren't you, Clark? If 50% of the meals were turned back because the customers didn't like them, would that be a problem?
Wouldn't be in business.
It wouldn't be in business. And I don't think that we should be sitting here and accepting a 50% failure rate from the FAA is acceptable. We need to be bolder. One of the ways to do it, as Clark mentioned in one of the previous meetings, was the Oakland flights go straight out through the Golden Gate. And that gets rid of all the separation and safety issues with the Styx procedure. That is being bold, and I think you can also argue that it's a fewer number of people affected as a result of being bold in the total community on the peninsula. I realize there'll be pushback from San Francisco, but it'll be pushback from people who are wealthy that live in the marina versus those people living in the southern part of San Francisco that at the moment are complaining about the Styx flights because they're being turned early.
Yeah, and I don't, to that point, Peter, if I could, because I don't think the noise level would be anywhere near what people may think it would be, because water is a great noise buffer. And the problem with Brisbane, and we've known this for a long time, is the bowl. Mm-hmm. The bowl effect, and the noise bounces, and it just goes up. I know I've been out on the bay in a boat,
Can you hear me right now?
having a normal conversation just like this, with the jet flying straight overhead, and
can
the
hear one right now.
conversation was still normal.
Yeah,
I know.
we've got one now we can hear.
Yeah. So,
So-
yeah.
I think, to be honest, we need to be bold and stand up for the council. Stand up for the residents of Brisbane and say, we need to be bolder than this. We need to suggest that if the FAA is designing a system that's a 50% failure rate, and they've designed it with all the information they've got now, there's something basically wrong with the system. And therefore, they need to be bolder and we need to send a letter, put the flights through the Golden Gate and stop the vectoring that's happening. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
That's good feedback on that point, Cliff, and maybe you could draft your letter to add some of that, and
Yeah.
I think that's the stronger the better, and just hit them on the nose with it, because
So, chances are that this letter will be ignored by most, and I know that you're doing as much as we can, to make it where it's not going to be totally ignored. But when we had originally talked about doing this letter and having us all sign on it, I think that we did give you a certain amount of leadway to write a letter you felt comfortable with, and that we were going to go along with it. And I think it's great that you've reached out to the community and get their feedback, and if you can incorporate that, then I think that I'm still happy to sign and
Okay, good.
support the letter.
Yeah, I think that this is all really great feedback, and we should incorporate that into the letter. I do definitely want to acknowledge what Patrick and Jay had recommended in terms of having maybe a community workshop where you could present some of the things that have been discussed at your meetings, and I know that the three of our community members here have had a lot of feedback and ideas, so it'd be great to have a night where people could come and talk about their experiences and their ideas as well, and just try and keep the community in the loop in not just a small item on a city council agenda late at night, but something where it's maybe an hour long where it can be discussed. I think that would benefit a lot of people.
Yeah, I think, having, say, Bert from the SFO Noise Abatement Office giving the presentation would be more appropriate than me.
Yeah.
I mean.
But I think you should
yeah.
be there too.
No, absolutely. Just in the feedback that I've received from the FAA, or actually from Kathleen Wentworth about scheduling. So sometime in early May, the FAA will put forth what their feedback is. What they think, would be, listening to what community members have said, and they're going to put forth something. Then that hopefully will be an opportunity for us to look at it and say, okay, that's good, but this doesn't go far enough. We want to see more. How that process gets played out, I don't know. I mean, I wish I could give more more guidance, more clarity, but that's how the FAA rolls. They just don't. And so probably in June, there will be a meeting with the FAA and the roundtable. And so what I'd like to see the roundtable do is put forth once the FAA comes out with their feedback, that we have a technical working group meeting, that's the subcommittee of the roundtable, to then go into the weeds of what the FAA is proposing. If you really are into this and you really want to know what's going on, I know that Peter's been to those meetings, and I think Patrick, you went to work. Yeah, I mean that's where you really get into the nuts and bolts of these things and be able to make those strong suggestions. yes, it is good to have, a community workshop to inform the community, but you have to have things to give to them, and we're not there yet. And so that'll be later on down the line. We have to have that back and forth with the FAA to really understand what you can do. I mean, it's great to propose something, but then if it's going to be shot down by the FAA, then you're wasting people's time. We really need to understand what can possibly be done.
Or not enforced.
Yeah, and then when the FAA says, okay, these are things you can do, then have that workshop and say, okay, here's what can be done. Are you comfortable with this, Brisbane? And either yes or no, because the FAA won't move forward with anything if they think they're going to cause another problem. They'll just leave it the way that it is, and then we will just deal with what's happening right now. I know people, kind of feel like, okay, well, the FAA is doing this initiative. They're going to, continue to have this type of engagement with us. There's no guarantee of that. Maybe we got one shot, and so we got to make sure that we articulate what we'd like to see.
I think ultimately, and this is kind of obvious and redundant, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? And I think there have been other cities, if I'm not mistaken, who've been very vocal, and they've figured something out. They've been doing something right. And I think, what was it Santa Cruz or Monterey, and then Palo Alto, I think. Like they've been very, very vocal and loud. I'm not saying that we're not, but I'm curious to see what strategy they use to get results in their communities, and to see if we can replicate some of that same style in the way that we approach the FAA as well.
Yeah, Brisbane's been a squeaky wheel for some years.
Yeah.
We used to have the highest amount of squeakiness of all of the cities in the round table. Now we've been surpassed. And, Portola Valley had a huge amount. And a lot of it is from, having these apps. It's a lot easier to log in complaints than what it used to be. But you're right, the folks down in the southern part of the peninsula and the Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz County, they have mobilized, in large numbers. And I will agree that made a big difference to get the FAA to the table. But that's what has happened. And they're at the table now. And so we have to be ready. We can't just say, okay, FAA, you caused the problem, you fix it. No, you got to articulate what you would like to see. And of course, you need assistance, technical assistance from staff, from the roundtable, and hopefully, some sincere back and forth with the FAA representatives. So I've gotten some good feedback. I will continue to work with, folks in the community to make this letter good, and then I'll just bring it back to the council, and we can easily bring this back to the next meeting.
I gotta go.
I know.
Okay, I haven't had a chance.
Oh, sorry.
Anything on this
Okay.
item?
Okay, sorry.
I'd just like to say a few words. So I also met with Patrick and Jay and Peter, and really appreciate their hard work and perseverance in bringing this to our attention. And I looked at an earlier draft, gave some comments, and I thought it was really important to have that part in the beginning that talked about not just the data, but the, how it affects real people who live here, to put a face to it for when the FAA reads the letter. As to the point that was raised about the second waypoint, I understand this is a really good opportunity for us to get in front of the FAA and give our specific suggestions. So I appreciate, the specificity. Yet at the same time, I also am somewhat concerned about, what if we put something in there that's actually going to hurt us and make it worse for Brisbane. So when I was looking at the letter, I thought, the goal is to really say noise is an issue, and the FAA needs to figure out how to reduce the noise that's being caused by this new procedure. So I would say to take that first point and to say, move the waypoint to a location where noise is reduced, or where, if that's flying over the bay or flying at a higher altitude, those can be some criteria. But I would be hesitant to tell the FAA, where we think the waypoint should be and whether there should be a second waypoint, because we just don't have that technical expertise. But I like everything else in the letter. And I like also having the ability to look at the data later on, to make sure that the noise is actually being reduced. So I think that was in there as well, to take a look at it and be able to revisit it if it's actually not being effective in reducing the noise. So yeah, I appreciate everyone's work on this. I think we're moving in the right direction. And
I will take that feedback, and but I will also get concerned citizens connected with SFO the SFO abatement office and Kathleen Wentworth to really kind of boil down, and our consultant for the roundtable to provide greater clarity, because I understand what you're coming from, but the FAA they're looking for us for guidance, and they don't know where the places that are best to fly. They will, they just go, okay, from here to here, that's the shortest route. We're going to do that, and that's what has caused problems in the past, and we can't go there. But we got to make sure that whatever we put forth does not make things worse. The ultimate goal is to make things better, and knowledge is key. And so I'm going to work with our constituents and the folks that know this stuff, and we'll put forth something that is the best that we can possibly propose. Ultimately, and the FAA calls the shots. Okay, any other? Okay, so we moved forward on this. Okay. Next is oral communications. Any item that's not on tonight's agenda. I did get a slip from Andy Torvik regarding the 3-foot passage easement. Sir?
Yeah. I'll try to be as concise as I can.
Yes, because we have a 5-minute.
Yeah,
Okay.
got a time limit. Okay, I can squeeze it in. Many weeks ago, I made a question out of the fact is, how does property grow? I need some seeds. I have purchased a 25-foot lot in Brisbane 50 years ago, where I have resided ever since. Sister to that is my neighbor 239, Walt Krager at the time, owned the property, is sitting on a 25-foot lot. His house rested entirely upon the lot. He encroached over the city passage easement, which is not allowable. You could do it with a encroachment permit after you take it to the council for a variance. None of that was done. I've been talking and discussing this point for months with Clay Holstein, who I'd like to say I lost a lot of respect for, and I'll say publicly that when I asked him and confronted him tonight, if any of you have received a letter, a 3-page letter, of which I wrote, and it was handed back to me, handwritten, dated, and read by a member of staff. And I said, is there any part of that letter you cannot understand or read? She said, no, the writing was clear and everything. I said, it's already been marked, but I want a furtherance to the mark because I don't think anything's going to be done about it. While you were on break, I asked Clay Holstein in front of the city attorney if he knew anything about it. He said he just received it today. That is a blatant lie, and I'll stand good for that. That is an outright blatant lie. All right, so I'll address it to you. That's a 3-foot easement that the city owns. Whether it's used properly or not, it's encroached upon. It interferes with the sale of the property, so as I've been told by the realtor, and to take a hands-off position, though it be next door to me immediately for 50 years. I'm not to look in that direction while a pipe burst in there with raw sewage coming to me, and first downhill recipient, because water runs downhill, not up, is me. I have every right to see that the contamination, not only for myself, but for the groundwater, for the future generations of this little town, and animals that drink from that filth hole that has, he said, been tested satisfactorily. I said I need a CD of it to ensure the fact that my daughter doesn't inherit a problem when I die, as she's willed for the property, and I want to clear this up before I do. I haven't that many years left, as I so stated in the letter that I asked him if you received, and you have, none of you, read the letter when it was addressed to you primarily and not to Clay Holstein. It's a 3-page handwritten letter, and I suggest you read it in its entirety, and I'd like to come back at a further date, and you, council members, can tell me how a 2,500 square foot lot can grow into being 2,800 square feet with the easement included in that has difficulties in sewage, raw sewage of the past. And he says it's been fixed. Randy Buell says it's been fixed. No, it has not. And when I asked for a view, I was told to stand in the corner of my garage by an Officer Ward at the time, and failure to do so would cause her to have some kind of police action against me. This is a town that I have lived in all of my adult life, and I respect it, but I'm losing my faith in that respect and the regard that I have for a blatant liar. I would hope, in the interest of the furtherance of justice, that you examine it in its fullest and make an intelligent decision based on
I know you.
fact.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Sure.
This is a disgrace to this little community. Please read the letter. He says he isn't aware of it. He's had it on his desk. He doesn't want to show it to you. He's hiding pertinent facts. Things that my daughter will have to...
Sir, you know what? You've already stated your claim.
All right,
Please.
all right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, so I will take a motion.
This has been going on for years, and I did a title search on that property, and that easement doesn't belong to the city. Not sure who it belongs to, but that was done before the city of Brisbane was a city, incorporated. The easement that Andy's talking about. And we did an analytical report on the water that was coming out of there, and we had the county of San Mateo come out, I think, on one or two occasions to analyze the water, and it said the water is cleaner than what is in a swimming pool or something to that effect, 500 times cleaner than what's it. So, Andy, I'm sorry, man, but
I know. All right, so
Review the facts of the letter.
you know what? Okay, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Closing memory.
Oh, yes, in closing memory of Roy Peters. Jeez, Roy Peters. Thank you, Clark.